Imagine this. You're walking down into your basement, expecting to find laundry, maybe a mess left behind by your kid. You're tired, annoyed, going through the motions, but then you see it, a bucket. Nothing unusual, until you get closer and inside that bucket is your son's head, eyes wide open, mouth slightly agape, like he was trying to say something before it was too late. This is the unthinkable horror Tara Pakanich walked into on February 23rd, 2022 in the quiet town of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Her son, 24-year-old Shad Thyrian, wasn't just dead. He had been decapitated, mutilated, and scattered in pieces throughout the basement of her own home. There was blood, so much blood, on the walls, on the mattress, and in that bucket, a silence that screamed louder than anything she had ever heard. She called 911. She could barely speak the words, and when officers arrived, even they weren't prepared for what they were about to walk into. Body parts, knives, a blacked-out crime scene that felt more like a horror movie than real life. It didn't take long to figure out who was responsible. Her name was Taylor Schabusiness, and once her name hit the headlines, it would stay there, for all the wrong reasons. A meth-fueled night of sex and sadism, a woman completely unhinged, and a crime so depraved even seasoned investigators struggled to understand it. But this wasn't just about drugs. It wasn't just about violence. This was about control, obsession, and a descent into madness that no one saw coming until it was far too late. So, what kind of monster could do this, and why? To truly understand the depth of this tragedy, we must first know the man at its center. If you're captivated by true crime stories and want to stay updated on the darkest cases, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We release in-depth crime documentaries just like this one, uncovering the chilling details behind real-life mysteries. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button now. Shad Thyrian was born on September 7, 1997 in Green Bay, Wisconsin, to parents Tara Pakanich and Michael Thyrian. From the outset, Shad was a beacon of kindness and compassion, traits that would define him throughout his life. Growing up in the Howard-Suamico area, Shad attended local schools where his gentle nature and warm smile left a lasting impression on classmates and teachers alike. He had an innate ability to make those around him feel valued and understood. Family was the cornerstone of Shad's world. He shared a close bond with his siblings, sisters Ava and Sylvia, and brother Bo. Together, they created a tapestry of memories filled with laughter, support, and unconditional love. Shad's parents, Tara and Michael, instilled in him the values of hard work, empathy, and resilience. Beyond his familial ties, Shad had a deep appreciation for the simple pleasures in life. He found solace in the great outdoors, often embarking on camping trips that allowed him to connect with nature and reflect. Games, both board and video, provided him with a fun escape and an opportunity to bond with friends and family. But perhaps one of Shad's most remarkable qualities was his selflessness. He consistently placed the needs of others before his own, offering a listening ear, a helping hand, or a shoulder to lean on. This generosity of spirit endeared him to many and cultivated a wide circle of friends who cherished his presence. In his professional life, Shad collaborated closely with his father and grandfather in their family businesses. Partnership was more than just work. It was a testament to the strong familial bonds and mutual respect they shared. Shad's artistic side was evident in his passion for wood carving. With each piece, he transformed simple blocks of wood into intricate artworks, showcasing his creativity and attention to detail. This hobby was not just a pastime, but a reflection of his ability to see beauty and potential in the raw and unrefined. In essence, Shad Thyrian was a young man whose life, though tragically cut short, was a testament to the profound impact one individual can have on the lives of many. His legacy is one of love, kindness, and an unwavering commitment to those he held dear. As we move deeper into this story, let's carry with us the memory of Shad, not just as a victim, but as a vibrant soul whose light touched countless lives. Every tragedy has a beginning, and sometimes it starts with a connection, one that looks ordinary from the outside, but behind closed doors becomes something much more dangerous. Shad Thyrian and Taylor Schabusiness weren't strangers. They'd known each other since middle school, part of the same community, the same small-town orbit. Years passed, paths shifted, but eventually those paths crossed again, and this time it would end in disaster. They started spending time together in their early 20s, when both were struggling. Shad was trying to find his footing, working with family, floating between moments of normalcy and the chaos that often trails behind young adulthood. He had a good heart, but like many people in pain, he sometimes looked for peace in the wrong places. Taylor was dealing with demons of her own. Her life had already begun to unravel: drug use, legal trouble, erratic behavior. But in Shad, she found something familiar. Someone who didn't judge her. Someone who maybe understood her in ways others didn't. Together, they created a bubble, cut off from reality, powered by methamphetamine and mutual detachment. What they shared wasn't love. It wasn't even romance in the traditional sense. It was survival in the most broken form. Nights of getting high, talking for hours, slipping into intimacy, and then crashing back into confusion. The lines were blurry. Were they friends? Lovers? Something in between? Even those close to them weren't entirely sure. But one thing was clear: their relationship wasn't healthy, it wasn't stable, it wasn't safe. Shad, by many accounts, was gentle, passive. He didn't push back, he didn't fight. Taylor, on the other hand, was spiraling. More volatile, more unpredictable. The drugs made it worse. They stripped away judgment, dissolved inhibition, and brought out the darkest parts of who she was becoming. There were warning signs, moments when Taylor's behavior crossed the line from reckless to disturbing. But like so many toxic pairings, it kept going, because addiction doesn't care about red flags. Loneliness doesn't either. They just keep pulling you deeper, and Shad, whether he knew it or not, was getting pulled into something he wouldn't escape from. A bond that began in familiarity had transformed into something unrecognizable, one that would end not in heartbreak, but in horror. Before the crime, before the headlines, before the name Taylor Schabusiness became synonymous with one of the most disturbing murders in recent memory, there was a girl spiraling. Taylor Schabusiness was born in 1998. Born traditionally as a man, she will later transition later in life. Raised in Wisconsin, by all appearances, she came from an ordinary background, but dig a little deeper and you'd find cracks forming early. There were signs, subtle at first: behavioral issues, outbursts, struggles at school, the kind of red flags that are easy to dismiss when someone's young, but harder to ignore as they get older. As a teenager, Taylor's life began slipping off course. She gravitated toward the wrong crowds. She started experimenting with drugs, marijuana, pills, eventually meth, and from there things escalated quickly. By her early 20s, Taylor was deeply entrenched in addiction. Methamphetamine wasn't just a drug she used, it became the central force in her life. It warped her perception, fueled her paranoia, and dragged her deeper into darkness. But drugs were only one piece of the puzzle. Taylor also battled serious mental health issues: psychotic episodes, delusional thinking, violent impulses. She was in and out of psychiatric care, diagnosed, medicated, released, and then back again. At times she seemed unreachable, lost in her own mind. And the systems in place to help her? They failed. Over and over again, she slipped through the cracks. Those close to her described her behavior as erratic, unhinged, and increasingly dangerous. One moment she could be calm, charming even. The next she was explosive, threatening, scary. By the time she connected with Shadtherian again, Taylor was no longer just a troubled young woman. She was a ticking time bomb. Her reality was a blur of meth, mania, and spiraling thoughts. And no one, not her family, not her doctors, not even she herself, could predict what she was capable of. But the signs were there: the instability, the lack of impulse control, the violent ideation, and deep beneath it all, a growing sense that the person Taylor used to be no longer existed. What remained was someone else, someone darker, someone dangerous. She was about to do the unthinkable. For 2 days, Tara Pekanich hadn't seen her son. Shad lived in the same house, but the days had passed without the usual check-ins, without a word. That wasn't like him, not even close. So, on February 23rd, 2022, when the doorbell rang, she was already uneasy. She didn't find anyone at the door, just that lingering sense that something was wrong. And then she went downstairs, into the basement, hoping maybe Shad was down there. But the basement was empty. No sign of him, no movement, no voice calling back. And when she came back up, that's when she saw it. A bucket, left in plain sight, placed while she was downstairs, quietly, deliberately. Inside it was her son's head. His expression frozen, his eyes open, a silent scream that said everything his mother couldn't. She didn't call the police. She couldn't. She could barely breathe. It was her boyfriend who picked up the phone, dialed 911, and tried to make sense of what they were looking at. When officers arrived, they were met with a scene that would haunt them. They followed the trail of blood back downstairs. There, they found more remains. Shad's torso stuffed into a plastic tote, other parts hidden, bagged, scattered. A gruesome jigsaw left behind by someone who didn't just kill, but carved. There was no question that this was more than murder. It was desecration, and whoever had done it had taken the time to leave behind a message, one soaked in cruelty, control, and complete detachment from reality. The first responders didn't speak much that day. What could they say? There are no words for what was done. For Tara, the nightmare hadn't just begun. It had been quietly unfolding around her for days, and now the truth was in full view. It didn't take long for police to find out who they were looking for. Inside the home, along with Shad's remains, they discovered a name, Taylor Schabusiness, a woman who had recently spent the night with Shad, a woman whose fingerprint trail and personal belongings were still inside the basement. She hadn't cleaned up. She hadn't even tried. Less than an hour after discovering the crime scene, officers traced her to a home on Stony Brook Lane, just a few miles away. When they arrived, they found her in the basement of that house as well, covered in dried blood, her hands, her clothes, her sweatshirt, all stained. And when asked what had happened, she didn't run. She didn't panic. She laughed. Taylor Schabusiness showed no signs of remorse, no fear. She was calm, almost pleased with herself. And then she started talking. In her interview with investigators, she rambled through a disjointed version of the night it happened. Taylor's mom was out, so she went back to the house with Taylor. She admitted they had smoked meth together. They had sex. They played a game they always did, which involved chaining each other. And then she strangled Shad with the chain. She said he didn't even try to stop her. She told them casually that she blacked out during part of it, that it was just too good to stop despite blood already coming out from his mouth. She said she liked it, and when asked what happened after the killing, how she had dismembered him, her response chilled even the most experienced officers. She said, "Have fun trying to find all the organs." She claimed she had planned to bring all the body parts with her, but got lazy and left the head behind for Shad's mom to find. Lazy, that was the word she used. Not panicked, not scared, lazy. Taylor went on to describe how she had used kitchen knives, a bread knife, and scissors. She spoke of the blood like it was an inconvenience, not a consequence. There was no emotion, no attempt to lie, no desire to save herself. It was as if she had already accepted what she had done and just didn't care. The arrest was swift, the handcuffs were cold, but Taylor Schabusiness, she remained disturbingly composed, like someone who believed the real story was just getting started. Why did she murder him? After her arrest, Taylor Schabusiness sat down in an interrogation room and smiled. Still wearing blood-soaked clothes, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were glassy, her speech erratic. But what stood out most wasn't the drugs in her system. It was her complete detachment from reality. As investigators questioned her, Taylor spoke freely, too freely, no hesitation, no shame. She described what happened in clinical detail, what she used, what she cut, what she left behind. There was no motive she could explain, no emotion she could express. Only this disconnected monologue about sex, murder, and mutilation. And that's when the question surfaced. Was Taylor Schabusiness insane? Her defense team thought so. Soon after charges were filed, they entered a plea of not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. They argued that Taylor didn't know right from wrong, that she had lost control due to a psychotic break, one fueled by years of untreated mental illness and the heavy influence of methamphetamine. Her past supported the claim. Taylor had a documented history of psychiatric issues. She had been in and out of treatment facilities for years, sometimes placed there by the court, other times admitted voluntarily. Diagnoses included mood disorders, psychosis, and hallucinations, but nothing ever stuck. She would receive help and then disappear again, untreated and unmonitored. Her drug use made it worse. Methamphetamine had taken over her life. She admitted to using it heavily in the days leading up to Shad's murder, so much so that she could barely remember where she had left his body parts. Multiple psychological evaluations were ordered by the court. Some experts believed she was mentally ill, no question, but others insisted she was sane enough to stand trial, that while she may have been disturbed, she still understood what she had done, she still knew it was wrong. In July of 2023, a jury was tasked with answering that question, and after hearing all the evidence, the reports, the interviews, the crime scene testimony, they came to a conclusion. Taylor Schabusiness was mentally ill, but not insane. She would not get to hide behind a diagnosis. She would not avoid punishment. Because the law had made its decision, she knew what she was doing, and she chose to do it anyway. By the summer of 2023, the case of Taylor Schabusiness had gripped not just Wisconsin, but the entire nation. Her crime was already infamous, but what unfolded inside the courtroom was something no one could have predicted. From the very beginning, the trial was tense. Prosecutors painted Taylor as cold, calculating, and fully aware of her actions. They presented chilling evidence. Photos from the scene, blood analysis, and her own taped confessions. They showed how she'd strangled Shadtarian, mutilated his body, and casually admitted to leaving his head behind for his mother to find. The jury listened to the words lazy, fun, and good sex come out of her mouth when describing the murder, words that hit like punches in the gut. Then came the defense. They didn't deny what she did. Instead, they argued she was mentally ill, deeply disturbed, driven by psychosis and drug addiction. They brought in medical experts, psychiatric evaluations, and tried to humanize Taylor in front of a community that had already made up its mind. But it wasn't just the evidence that shocked the courtroom. It was Taylor herself. She didn't act like someone on trial for murder. She smirked, laughed, whispered to herself, and then she snapped. In February of 2023, during a routine court appearance, Taylor suddenly lunged at her own defense attorney, Quinn Jolly. She stood up, grabbed him by the collar, and wrestled him to the floor in front of a stunned courtroom. Deputies had to pull her off as she thrashed and screamed. It wasn't a one-time thing. In April of 2025, she attacked her second attorney, Curtis Julka, during another hearing, this time related to a separate assault charge for attacking a corrections officer. Each outburst chipped away at her credibility and deepened the jury's sense that this wasn't just about drugs or trauma, this was about someone who reveled in chaos. When closing arguments wrapped, the jury deliberated for just over a day. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. First-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, third-degree sexual assault. The sentencing came soon after. Taylor Schabusiness was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no second chance, no reduced sentence, no fading into the background. Her name was sealed in infamy, her crimes forever remembered, and as she was led out of the courtroom, still grinning, still unshaken, the weight of what she had done lingered like a shadow over everyone who had witnessed it. In the aftermath of it all, what's left is silence. The kind of silence that sinks into the walls of a house, the kind that never really leaves. For the Thurian family, the horror didn't end with the trial. It lingers. In the memories, in the questions, in the unbearable weight of knowing what Shad endured. His mother, Tara, has chosen to stay largely out of the spotlight. She doesn't chase headlines, she doesn't speak to cameras, she grieves quietly, privately, and who could blame her? There is no recovering from something like this. There is only surviving it. Shad's siblings, his sisters, his brother, they carry his memory forward. In the photos, in the stories, in the way they remind each other who he was before everything. And if you're fascinated by true crime, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss an upload. We have more gripping stories coming soon, shedding light on cases that deserve to be told. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.